Good afternoon, Campbell McCreary here, Amvest Capital in New York. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Adventus Mining Corporation. Adventus trades on the venture as ADZN, Alpha Delta Zebra Nevada, and as ADVZF, as Alpha Delta Victor Zebra Foxtrot, on the OTCQX. Hope you'll enjoy today's program. It will be available in replay mode. Feel free to chat in your questions in the question pane of GoToWebinar, or just email them in, and we'll integrate them into our Q&A. And Amvest is a New York-based specialist investment management and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resource sector. Please note this call is for informational purposes only. A copy of this event will be available in about an hour after we wrap up at amvestcapital.com/webinars. Very good. And then when you log out, please share with us your feedback. You'll be cued to share a few lines, and it's really appreciated, and it'll make its way to management. Very pleased to have with us today, making you presenter, Christian, and turn on your webcam. Christian Kargl-Simard, President, CEO, and Director of Adventus. He's a professional engineer with nearly 20 years of experience in the mining industry in both technical and finance roles. 10 long, hard years at investment banking at Raymond James and Haywood Securities, and has a lot of high-profile deals under his belt. Again, please share your feedback and during the show your questions. So, Christian, how you doing? Welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for having me on Amvest today. So today I'm going to talk about how we're building a copper gold platform in Ecuador, a little bit about our history. The company is just about 4 years old. It started as a cashed up company in December of 2016. We had a mandate to build a base metal business somewhere in the world. We looked at 240 assets in 25 countries, and we decided to pivot into Ecuador late 2017. We convinced the board and major shareholders that that's where we saw the opportunity globally to build a significant business, and we've been there for just over three years. We love Ecuador. We love the people. We love the geological potential. What I like to say is Ecuador is like Peru or Chile. It's just 50 to 75 years behind them in terms of developing the business. So that's the opportunity. And they have a very progressive government that is supportive of mining and wanted to grow the industry into the largest industry in the country over the next 10 years. I'll be having some forward-looking statements here through the presentation. So why Adventus? So first and foremost, we are developing rapidly the most economic copper development project in the world. How can I say most economic? Well, what I mean by that is the highest IRR, and that's driven by grade. So our measured and indicated resource grade is 5.6% copper equivalent, and the fact that the majority of that resource is open pittable. We will be publishing a feasibility study on the project in October of this year. We also have other very important milestones this year, which include the submittal of the ESIA document. So that's the final environmental permit document to the government for review late third quarter, early Q4. And we're in late stages of arranging a project finance facility, which should come prior to the feasibility study being completed, for over 80% of the capital costs of the project. While we are advancing the feasibility study on Aldomo, we're also drilling in our 3 districts for new discovery. So we hope to make a new discovery of significance by the end of this year, and that's the lottery ticket upside to this company. And finally, from a corporate perspective, we have 45 million in cash and investments in the bank versus 145 million market cap. That's sufficient capital to take us to at least a construction light decision, which we hope to make about a year from now, first quarter of 2022. There's also sufficient cash to continue to explore some of the targets I'm going to take you through in this presentation. We have a very strong shareholder register with deep-pocketed investors. We have subscribed to the World Gold Council ESG principles. Our ESIA is done to Equator principles. And we built a business in Ecuador where we're aligned with Ecuadorian principles and money and values. And the key relationships we have there are with Nobis, who is our fourth largest shareholder of the company. They're the largest industrial conglomerate in Ecuador, and Salazar Resources. So Salazar is the most successful exploration group in Ecuador's history, and they're minority partners on all three projects. But through Salazar, we've built an all Ecuadorian separate team covering each of our three projects. Why copper? I believe copper is the commodity that will benefit the most out of the green revolution. And I think this slide shows it best in terms of moving from fossil fuels to a metals world. So 15 kilograms of copper in your average fossil fuels car, and 60 kilograms of copper in electric vehicles, etc. So I'll let you read this at your leisure. This presentation, by the way, is on our website. But copper is a very large business. It is not replaceable in terms of the actual applications of copper, such as vehicles, but also the distribution of electricity and also the generation of electricity. Why is Aldomo so special? So what we've done here is compared Aldomo to its copper development peers. The top two charts here show after-tax NPV to capex ratios and initial capex to market cap ratios. Why is this important? This just goes to optionality in terms of most copper developers have large porphyry development projects. These are projects that have multi-billion-dollar capex and are very difficult to develop as a single asset developer. So your best chance to create value or to move the project forward is to sell to a larger company. Because Aldomo is so high grade, we have that optionality to actually build it as well. So the top three projects or companies here on both charts, Arctic with the Trilogy Metals, Aldomo, which is Adventus, and Marimaca, which is Marimaca Copper, have very good optionality to either build or sell the company over the next few years. The bottom left chart shows grade. We're tied for highest grade in the copper development business, as well as all-in sustaining costs, which is negative per pound of copper produced. And the bottom right chart just shows scale of cash flow. So if you took spot metal prices in 2020 and Aldomo in the first year of production, which is representative of the first 6 of the 15 years of mine production, we would have had more cash flow than any of these Canadian listed junior copper producers. We have 131 million shares outstanding, currently trading in the $7 to $10 range, which gives us about 145 million Canadian market cap. With the cash and equities primarily being Canstar Resources. Canstar owns the southern part of the district where Newfound Gold has made its major discovery in Newfoundland. Gives us an enterprise value of 100 million Canadian. We are covered by 5 brokers, several of which have Adventus as their top 2021 base metal developer pick. And as you can see, our share price has started to build from the lows here. We have several large buyers in the market today, and we're averaging about $350,000 Canadian a day of trading volumes. Our investor base, so we currently don't have a mining company on our register. We've done that by design to date. All of our investors are financially driven. We have 4 strategic investors, Altius and Wheaton as major Canadian royalty companies, royalty or streaming companies, Greenstone as a private equity group out of London, and Nobis, as I mentioned previously, the major industrial conglomerate in Ecuador. We have 35 plus institutional investors, the largest being United States. So our large investors would be Invesco, Oppenheimer, Force Sale, both out of New York, but also Merck and Franklin. But we truly have a global shareholder base, as you can see in this pie chart on the bottom right. So Nobis is in many industries. They also co-own with DP World the largest port in Ecuador outside of Guayaquil. Guayaquil is the largest city in Ecuador with about 4 or 5 million people, and Nobis's headquarters are there in Guayaquil. Interestingly, with the new president, Lasso, just having won the election, Lasso is from Guayaquil, and so both of them know each other very well. Nobis is very important to us as they really control the economy of Guayaquil, and therefore as a president or president over the last 60, 70 years, you can't ignore Nobis as an important economic engine in the country. Nobis's CEO Roberto sits on our board of directors, and we have a very good relationship with them. Management. So our officers are shown in the green here. We're all ambitious professionals that come from major mining companies and have joined Adventus as an entrepreneurial company looking to create a major mining organization. And in the gold are our board of directors, many people that you may know in the mining sector in Canada, where we have representation from all different industries, including Barry, who's a mine builder, several very successful investment bankers, but also founders of companies and geologists. So in this day and age, ESG and carbon footprint is super important, and it will only get more important. So there's a few key factors on why our project is a standout in the developer space. First of all, the 90% of Ecuador's power grid is hydroelectric. It has the second cheapest power in South America, so we'll be connected to that hydroelectric grid. Secondly, grade is king. It's also very important from a carbon footprint perspective. So at 5.6% copper equivalent, we need to move much less tons per ton of copper produced than most other mines on the planet. It's low copper mine, it's a low carbon copper mine, as mentioned for the previous reasons, but also from a logistics perspective. We're less than 200 kilometers away from that deep water port that Nobis owns primarily on the Pan American Highway. This is the most advanced new development project in the mining sector in Ecuador. We expect it to be the third major mine in the country. Our studies show that the project should return over $500 million in investments, taxes, and royalties during the life of mine. And of course, there's a major multiplier effect. We've invested heavily into our communities. We spend about $1 million a year on social benefits, short, medium, long term. And we've got a strong relationship with our local communities. This map here on page 11 shows where 3 projects are in Ecuador. All 3 of them are on the western side of the Andes. All 3 of them have a major operating around each of them. All 3 of them have at least 2 roads to the project. Our primary project is the Curipamba district, which holds the Aldomo high-grade volcanic massive sulfide lens that is subject to the feasibility study. And the other 2 projects, Pijili and Santiago porphyry projects in the south. We hold with the Salazars, Pijili and Santiago, in an 80-20 joint venture. And in the case of Curipamba, we will have earned in an initial 95% interest in the district once we complete our feasibility study in the 4th quarter of this year. We are required to fund 100% of the capital costs to commercial production. And then we split the free cash flow the dividends from the project 95.5 until our investment is recouped, and then those dividends get split 75-25 thereafter. So jumping into Aldomo now. So this is the resource estimate that was the basis of a PEA in May of 2019. This is being updated. This resource is being updated with another approximately 50 holes for the feasibility study, which will ultimately drive the reserves for that fees as well. But you can see we have north of 10 million tons, primarily in the measured and indicated category, breaking down as 2% copper, 3.2 grams gold, 3.2% zinc, 55 grams silver, and a little bit of lead. We produce primarily, from a value perspective, a copper con with significant gold and silver credits, but also a zinc concentrate and a small lead concentrate. All three of those concentrates are very high quality. We have not sold any of the rights to those concentrates, and we've received just in the last 6 months north of 12 groups interested in doing offtake on this project. But by producing those three concentrates, we are recovering all of the minerals, all the metals in this project. And from a global perspective, most people understand in gold terms, we have close to 2.5 million ounces of gold equivalent at over 8 grams gold equivalent. If that was a gold mine, we would probably be triple or quadruple the market cap we are today. The majority of this resource is located 40 to 80 meters below surface. We've acquired all the key surface rights to build a mine, and we've got a mining permit for the district, good for 25 years. The other key permit you need in Ecuador is the environmental impact assessment, which, as I mentioned, we'll be submitting the draft to the government end of third quarter for approval within 12 months from there. A key part of the story is exploration on all three projects, but specifically in this district, as shown in the green. Aldomo, you can see, is almost in the middle of the district. The rest of the district has been underexplored. The stars indicate geophysical targets developed by the maiden airborne geophysical survey we flew a few years ago. We're currently doing the ground truthing to get those targets ready for drilling, and we expect to continue drilling multiple targets in this district over the foreseeable future. We've budgeted 4,000 meters of drilling this year. We're currently 1,000 meters into that drilling without any results publicized yet. Also in the district, we have an open pit kaolinite mine. It's not owned by us, it's owned by an Ecuadorian group that is currently in production. So there's already an example of an open pit mine in the district. And the only two other areas that have been drilled are Sesmo, where we discovered a white smoker with a small gold resource, and down here at Sesmo Sur, where there's a small gold resource as well. So everything drilled to date has been successful in outlining a deposit. Aldomo, exceptional grades. So we have been drilling the highest grade copper equivalent drill results in the world over the last 3-4 months. I encourage you to look at the press releases on our website. But here are a couple. March 16th, 44 meters of 5% copper equivalent. February 8th, 13.6% copper equivalent, etc. The open pit outline you can see is in the red in the foreground here, and this is a almost flat sheet averaging 10 meters thick. It continues underneath this dome, and it is open to the east on the other side of that dome. So there is an underground component to the mine plan, mining that sheet underneath the dome, which is in the latter part of the mine life. Economics. So in summer 2019, we published these economics, which had less than a 2-year payback using $3.15 per pound copper, $13.50 gold, etc. We hired in July of last year DRA Engineering with a group of subcontractors on the top right here listed to complete our feasibility study. They completed an internal pre-feasibility study for us in December of last year, confirming many of the high-level results from the PEA. So we didn't actually release it as we didn't think it was material. We've locked in the orientation of the project and are very comfortable in how the project will look in the feasibility study expected in October of this year. On an apples-to-apples basis, the PFS is slightly better than the PEA. We've increased the throughput from 1750 to 1850 tons per day. We've added a lead recovery circuit in comparison to the PEA. We've substantially improved the concentrate quality, and so we're getting. We have no deleterious elements in our concentrates, and we get very good payability for all the metals. On a gold equivalent basis, you'd be looking at around 100,000 ounces of gold equivalent production for 15 years at around a $350 to $400 all-in sustaining cost basis. This is a neat project in terms of the metal mix. In the summer of last year, at the height of the precious metals pricing, we would have been around 55% precious metals, 45% base. Now that's flipped to more like 55% base metals, 45% precious metals. All right, so key milestones for development here outside of the exploration drilling is we are well along the way of being able to announce a project finance package for about $170 to $175 million this summer. Submitting the ESIA, as I mentioned, later this year, the feasibility study in October of this year, and following that, we should enter fairly quickly into detailed engineering and an investment agreement with the government of Ecuador. We've assumed in our execution plan a 12-month approval process for the ESIA. The last one to be approved was Lundin Gold's Frutal Norte project, which was less than 12 months. So we're hopeful of that, but we're not expecting that. And we are then looking at the start of full-scale construction in October 2022 and about a 14 to 15-month build, which gets us into commercial production in the first half of 2024. So outside of Curipamba, you've got an advanced development project where we're spending 85% of our cash, and we've got the regional exploration around Aldomo to make new discoveries. We have porphyry exploration in the Pijili and Santiago districts in southern Ecuador. We have been drilling at Pijili since late June 2020 and been drilling just one of the 18 airborne geophysical anomalies identified by us in the district. We announced a maiden discovery in October 2020 on one of those targets. Keep in mind, none of these geophysical targets have ever been drilled. We expect additional drilling results over the next few weeks. And at Santiago, which is our most high-profile exploration target, we hope to be drilling there in the summer of this year. So at Pijili, we're developing a district-scale land position surrounding Southern Copper's Chaucha project, which is outlined in the yellow. There's about a 1 to 1.5 billion ton porphyry in feasibility study within the yellow, and we've been building this land position in almost a horseshoe shape around Chaucha. The blue concessions we own. The purple concessions are in progress and should be granted to us once the cadastre reopens. The first target we've drilled is on the Mercy concession here, and specifically when you look at the airborne geophysics, where these circular features up here in the bottom here of the page. So what did we drill? What was our discovery hole? So hole number 1 down here on the bottom right of the page, we drilled 65 meters around 0.45% copper equivalent from surface, including 9 meters at 2% copper equivalent. We also announced in October a 700 meters step to the north of that, which drilled 130 plus meters around 0.3% copper equivalent. Those are interesting results. I would say those are excellent results. It's the first 2 holes ever drilled in a porphyry system. We know it's a large system, so we continue to drill wide-spaced holes, kind of 200 to 400 meter spacing in between as you move to the north towards Southern Copper's Chaucha project, which is 5+ kilometers to the north of where we're drilling. As we drill to the north, We did test pitting in advance of the drilling, where you're removing the overburden, getting into bedrock, assaying that bedrock to help orientate where you're going to drill the next holes. And we have seen vein density improving and mineralization improving as you go north. So stay tuned for the next 9 holes to come out, as mentioned, over the next few weeks. Last week, we had a press release that came out which discussed the ground truthing. So after you do the airborne geophysics, you take teams to these targets, you do mapping, sampling, trenching, chip sampling, etc., to help hone in on where you're going to drill. So that press release last week discussed the targeting that has been taking place on 4 additional porphyry targets on these 2 concessions. We should be ready for drilling late this year. Santiago, as mentioned, is the most exciting target that we've developed. Many similarities to Solaris's Warintza project, which is now almost $1 billion market cap company, which I'll take you through those similarities in a minute. We are adjacent to Newcrest's $110 million earn-in with Cornerstone, as shown in this gold circle. SolGold has their second highest priority regional exploration target down here in Ecuador. As you can see in their materials, they plan to be drilling here shortly. But our target of interest is this green circular feature that you can see here, which partially goes onto Newcrest's property. So this is the results of the first time airborne geophysics has been done on this property, and that program was flown 2 years ago. So what is of interest here, and this an analogy with Solaris's Warintza. So Warintza was drilled 20 plus years ago. There was a 150 million ton resource, around 0.6% copper equivalent, copper moly, shallow drill holes. 20 plus years later, they come in there with modern airborne geophysics. They see a very large system. They're drilling 1 kilometer holes, mineralized top to bottom, and they're on their way to a 1 billion ton resource. So the analogy here is these lines here from surface are Newmont drilling from 25 years ago. This property has sat for 25 years. There were shallow holes drilled to no deeper than 325 meters from surface. You can see some of the highlights in the bottom right, including 323 meters from surface of 0.65% copper equivalent. In this case, you're looking at a gold copper system. 25 years later, we fly the airborne geophysics, and interestingly, just at the bottom of the holes where Newmont was drilling, you see the start of a large mag low, big alteration zone, which is where you expect the heart of a porphyry. This is a very large system, 3 kilometers across, 2.2 kilometers deep, 2 kilometers into the page. So our theory is that we should be drilling 1 kilometer holes here, just like in the case of Warintza. The mineralization should be getting stronger at depth, and our hope is to have a few 1 kilometer holes into the market in the fall of this year, where we're seeing a kilometer of hopefully 1% copper equivalent. That would be a company-making type of discovery, but that is ahead of us. It's funded in our treasury, and we currently have technical teams at the project doing mapping and sampling, determining where we're going to drill 3 or 4 holes. Obviously, we're going to twin a couple of these nice historical holes and go much deeper. So to summarize our 2021 program, first of all, it's fully funded. So our treasury takes us to early next year, and it is very milestone heavy. The last 3 years we've been in Ecuador, we've really been building up to these key milestones. So outside of regional exploration within the Curipamba district, which we've budgeted 4,000 meters, and are hoping for new discoveries, in particular on new VMS systems. The big milestone is the completion of the feasibility study with maiden reserves in October, as well as submitting the draft environmental assessment to the government of Ecuador. That alone is about a $5 million investment that started in 2019 when we installed environmental stations and, of course, all the baseline work over the last few years, including hydrogeological drilling. At Pijili and Santiago, you'll see the next 9 holes over the next few weeks at Pijili. with continued grooming of targets within the district and in the high-profile drilling at Santiago starting in the third quarter of this year. And as Adventus, we continue to evaluate opportunities, both private and public, in Ecuador with our partners, the Salazars, to see if we can grow that portfolio. We have a lot on the go with these 3 projects, but if there's another project that competes from a geological perspective, we would consider adding to the package. A big event for us is going to be the project finance package. Because under current spot pricing, the payback is just over a year. We have a lot of interest with very attractive proposals, and very few projects have the ability to announce a project finance package prior to the feasibility study due to the high-grade quality of the resource in a great copper backdrop. I think this will be one of the few that can do this. And the last company I saw announce such a package before the feasibility study was Silvercrest Metals. We will continue to build the Ecuadorian team with locals. Separately to everything we're doing in Ecuador, we have a joint venture with South32. They're spending 5.5 million Canadian over 4 years to earn a 70% interest in all of our projects there. So they will be drilling later this year. So that is further upside. I also mentioned our 25% investment in Canstar Resources. They're about 2 years behind Newfound Gold in the same district. So that position could materially re-rate and be of benefit to our shareholders. And we're always looking to add to our already strong shareholder base. I'll stop it there.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for sending in your questions. Let's dive in. Investors will need good visibility on ESG factors between now and finish of permitting and construction, given recent NGO challenges to mining permits at provincial level. Can you give us some details on your plans in this regard? And I would keep your presentation up so you can skip around.
Can you still see the presentation?
Yeah, but might as well put it in a slideshow mode there.
Okay. Okay, so ESG I talked about earlier in the presentation, specifically on this slide. The Salazars discovered Aldomo in 2008. They're an Ecuadorian group. As mentioned, all of our team is Ecuadorian. They understand Ecuadorian culture and values. We've been able to work closely with the Salazars to advance our, I think, peer-leading ESG programs as the project evolves and moves towards a construction decision. And in particular, right now, we're looking at long-term benefits to the communities, such as reopening the university there for a multitude of different disciplines. But we're also trying to help agricultural producers go into co-ops to sell their products, etc. So we've been there with the community for the last 10 years, and we expect to be there for several decades. And we work very, very closely with them and employ hundreds of people directly. And then there's the multiplier effect that occurs there as well. I also mentioned the ESG aspects of this project. Very, very small footprint. The project has been designed to the highest standards, Canadian standards, from a water and environmental perspective, much higher than the Ecuadorian standards. We also, it's important to note, don't have any acid rock drainage on this project, which is always a concern for VMSs. But for all those reasons, I think we have a pretty solid plan that has been put together by Knight Piésold and also all of our stakeholders.
recognizing this question is premature, but a lot of people think about it. So the best that you can answer, how much copper, gold, zinc, and silver do you think you could produce in a year? Not equivalents, but if you had to write something on an envelope, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so the first 6 years of the mine life have significantly higher production than the latter 9 because they're higher grades in those first 6 years. So you're looking closer to 12 to 15,000 tons of copper, whereas the average over life of mine is more like 10 to 11,000 tons. Those are metric tons of copper. You're looking at about 40,000 ounces of gold and silver converted to gold. In those first 6 years of mine life, the average over life of mine is more like 33,000 ounces of gold and silver converted to gold. And zinc is averaging in the first 6 years in the 15 to 20,000 tons, and it more like the low teens over the life of mine. So that gives you a sense. There is room to expand that production level. So life of mine on equivalence basis, you're around 20,000 tons of copper equivalent production, 25,000 tons of copper equivalent over the first 6 years. We think we can expand that production perhaps by 50% more, and that is through moving up to underground production earlier in the mine life, let's say in years 5 or 6. Underground is grading close to 7% copper equivalent, so there's a grade component there. And you can mine the open pit and underground at the same time. Separately, we can add an additional recovery circuit to the process plant to recover additional gold and silver primarily, which we plan to do through cash flow.
Could you discuss just a bit more about the outcome of the elections, what it means for operations, permitting, what is Lasso's position on open pit mining and water issues, just that in general?
Yeah, this presentation is good timing because on Sunday were the second round of the elections, and Lasso won the election. So what does Lasso bring to Ecuador? So stability, and you can see that through the rebound in the international bonds of Ecuador. At the low there in February, I think it was 40 cents in the dollar. Now we're close to 80 cents in the dollar. Lasso is a former banker from Guayaquil. He believes in foreign direct investment agreements, the IMF, U.S. investments in the country, and so we think he's very good for continuing the development and advancement of Ecuador from a global perspective. Lasso is very clear on his support for oil and gas and mining sectors. They are really the pillar of the economy going forward. But he wants development to be done in an environmentally responsible, socially responsible way. So we think Aldomo is a very good case study and kind of next mine that under the Lasso government can be permitted and developed with those values. So we look forward to working with him and his team on permitting this project and being a kind of a flagship of low carbon, small footprint, and strong community engagement.
Thank you. Stu?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Christian. So the Nobis Group, are they partnered with any other mining companies? And and why did they select you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we entered Ecuador, I'd never heard of Nobis. In South America, lawyers are quasi-investment bankers. We got a call in late 2018 by a law firm representing Nobis in Ecuador. This law firm had been evaluating mining opportunities for Nobis for about 4 or 5 years. They were looking for an investment that was right-sized for Nobis, in particular in terms of size and development timelines. So their view was that Aldomo was going to be the next mine to be built in Ecuador and had a high chance to be that next mine. And then secondly, they wanted to be involved with a company where their money and outreach actually made a difference. So the relationship has been wonderful. We're their only investment in mining, and they're looking to help us build a significant Ecuadorian-focused mining company, not only from a financial perspective, but I think one of the key things they provide is the Nobis Foundation, which is similar to the Lundin Foundation for the Lundin Group of companies, and they are augmenting our social programs in Ecuador.
That's great. And then on the capex at Aldomo of $165 million, how much goes to the mill? And will you have to reinvest into the mill later in the mine life, or it's capable of treating the ore for the current 6 years?
Yeah, so the mine life is 15 years. This volcanic massive sulfide lens is homogeneous through the life of mine, so there's no oxide or transitional or copper area and then the gold area and then the zinc area. It's a single massive sulfide lens, which is consistent throughout the 800 meter strike. So only one mill is required over the life of mine. Of the 165 million, the capital cost for the process plant is about 60 million. I know that's direct cost, then you have to add contingencies, indirects, etc. The majority of the capital cost for this project is tailings, waste rock, water management, water treatment plant, and designing that to the highest standards.
Yep. And then on that comment of having no acid rock drainage earlier, is that due to the surrounding geology and perhaps limestone in the area, or if you could, why is this deposit so fortunate to have that?
Yeah, we hired a group called Phase Geochemistry a few years ago. This is an activity that doesn't cost a lot, but takes a long time to do the ARD characterization. And they look at all the different phases of the mineralization, both overburden, waste rock, and the different phases of the ore body as well, and they do the cell testing on determining which minerals are ARD generating, which phases are ARD generating or not. So it's just the nature of the minerals in the system. There is a built-in neutralizing capacity within the ore body, and interestingly, we assumed in the PEA all of the material, the waste, overburden, and ore was 100% acid rock generating. Now none of it is. So that has made our project much more robust. It has allowed us to save some costs on the size of the treatment plant, etc. And so it's just how God made it.
Yeah, it's a huge win, especially with the local people as well.
Yeah.
And have site visits or lack thereof held up the project finance timeline, or were you fortunate to have them before COVID, or have you been able to have them?
Yeah, COVID has been a challenge, I would say, in particular for South American M&A, strategic investments, etc. Ecuador has been somewhat spared, and what's positive is that mining is an essential service. So other than March to June of last year, we've been operating very well in the country, including we had a peak of 7 drill rigs here, mostly between October and February. It has been a challenge to get potential corporate investors or just corporates in general down into Ecuador. No problem flying in from the US, for example, from Dallas or Houston or New York, etc. But on the way back, you need to quarantine, of course. In terms of project financing groups, some went before COVID, and there is definitely enough professionals in Ecuador covering all facets that groups can hire them to do the due diligence. So knock on wood, our project financing is largely de-risked from a due diligence perspective. And we don't think that that's going to hold up getting an announcement on an attractive package this summer.
Yeah. And then how confident are you and the project finance groups to, put together a binding finance arrangement before the feasibility is released, which, as you said, is quite rare, and Silvercrest was probably the last to do it?
I am quite confident that that's going to happen. What would derail that is any corporate activities, which would that's a good problem to have. But where I'm sitting today, something significant has to happen, probably from a strategic perspective, to derail that happening prior to the feasibility study being announced.
Yeah. And then are there going to be many other main differences between the two studies besides that increased throughput you mentioned and the zinc circuit, and why you chose to do that?
Yeah, so the PFS built on the PEA in terms of finalizing the flow sheet, improving the concentrate quality, adding the lead circuit. We did 18 trade-off studies, many of which were summarized in the press release early December, one of which was increasing the throughput to 1850 tons per day. The pre-feasibility study that we did had significantly more detail on the costing side of things. So in the PEA, for example, we had maybe 20 line items on the capital costing. The PFS had 6,000 to 7,000 line items. We expect the feasibility study to have double that, say 14,000 line items with everything costed out, maximizing Ecuadorian content. I mentioned that the orientation of the project has been locked in now from the PFS, so we think the fees will mirror the PFS very closely. The capital cost we expect to go up slightly, let's say from 165 to 175 to call it 180. But that would be a very strong result, especially seeing that we're increasing the throughput as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Pass on to Gabe.
Thanks, Christian. Just Aldomo resource, is it just a single ore body you mentioned, or is it multiple ore bodies that go into the resource?
It's a single massive sulfide lens, which is outlined in the red outline, or the red line that you see on this page here. I did mention a white smoker that we drilled off a few kilometers north of Aldomo at Sesmo. We never calculated a resource there, but it would be on way 50,000 ounces of gold and silver at surface. And then at Sesmo Sur, you might see 50 to 75,000 ounces of gold and silver at surface. But as I mentioned, almost all the activity over the last 10 plus years in the district has been advancing Aldomo to a construction decision. And this entire project and feasibility study is entirely based on a single VMS lens.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. And what would you say, I guess, is the critical path item on the EIA?
So the critical path item would be for submittal of the EIA. We are doing the community outreach, so socialization of the project over the next 3-4 months, so that we can get the feedback formally from all the communities to form the part of the basis of the ESIA. So that's just getting started right now, and will be complete by June, July. We'll be ready to submit the ESIA by August. The new president is going to be sworn in late May. It's going to take a few months before he appoints the ministers on each of the key disciplines in Ecuador and announces any potential changes to policies. We wouldn't submit the ESIA before those ministers and policies have been announced, and we've had a chance to sit down with the relevant ministries ahead of submittal. So we think the earliest then for submittal is August, but that could be delayed to say October, November. So that is that is really the rate limiting step when that clock starts for the ESIA, and then from there is we've assumed 12 months. Now maybe if there's a delay in submitting the ESIA, the approval doesn't take 12 months, it only takes 6, and we've won that way. But once submitted, there's a pretty clear path with the first step accepting all the terms and the scope of the project, and then a final step for the government to do a day of outreach to communities of themselves. And as mentioned in the case of FDN, that was less than a 12-month process.
Great. Yeah, I guess the recent results, the election results, you know, give confidence that at least it's kind of what the better outcome of what happens. That's a win there as well. So the recent sort of infill drilling at Aldomo, what is it sort of telling you, and is it sort of consistent with what you're expecting?
So the simple answer is yes. Both the widths and the grade are working very well within the block model that we have, you know, within plus or minus 10%. So there's been no surprises. Every time we've infill drilled this project, the grade has come up, and that's just a function of being conservative on the resource estimation and the area of influence around each of the holes and capping. I've been very pleased with the results to date, and I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, that you might see a small increase in grade for the reserves.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. Thank you very much, Campbell.
Yeah. Want to thank everyone for tuning in and for your great questions. And it's a real exciting story here, Christian. I'll turn it over to you. And you know, I'll always ask, and you've said it almost on every page, why you should in fact buy the stock now. But I'll ask it again in summary: why should we buy the stock now? And then we'll close.
Well, this is a very hedged story. You have, of course, our Ecuadorian connections and relationships, which hedge our business in Ecuador from a political and social perspective. You have 3 projects each, which could be company making projects. So, you know, if for one reason we lost one of the projects, another project could still be the company maker. So this year, in terms of catalysts that could see the stock double on its own, a drill hole from Santiago, so late fall for that. Success from Pijili drilling, so results are coming shortly on that. The completion of the feasibility study and recognition that this is the most economic copper development project in the world, and advance it quickly into production. That's another aspect. And in the project finance package, where the market will recognize that the equity required to build this mine is actually quite small. I think any of those, plus of course a potential discovery regionally around Curipamba, so any of those on their own could materially re-rate the share price. If all of them happen, you could see 2, 3, 4 times where we're trading today. And therefore the downside to where we are today, especially with the cash in our treasury, is very low. So Campbell, appreciate again being on this platform. I'm easy to get a hold of. Best is through email. My email address is at the bottom of this page, christian@adventusmining.com.
That's easy. Great. Thank you. And thanks, everyone. Please share your feedback on your way out. All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, Christian.